Hey, it's Janelle Waz, and welcome back to another episode of Treknalysis. Troi. Now, I know I spent an entire episode of Treknalysis roasting the Enterprise's part-time empath for her actions in The Price, but I want to make it clear. I actually like Deanna Troi. She has a pleasant demeanor, she dresses nicely, and I even like the Fran Drescher-esque hair.
I'll say this book is flattening my whole poof.
At the same time, she's not a very well-written character. Heck, I'm about 99% sure that Troi lied about being an empath on her resume and spends her entire tenure on the Enterprise trying not to get caught.
It's almost as if you have no business training at all.
Well, I'm just trying to get ahead.
Now, sure, when Marina Sirtis is given a proper script, like Face of the Enemy, she does very well and the character she plays benefits from it. Troi, as a character, had a lot of potential. Sadly, though, there were a lot of missed opportunities to make Deanna Troi a great character, and she even has episodes that make her look terrible. Enter the Season 4 episode, The Loss, where Deanna loses her powers and takes it out on everyone around her. And what's sad is that this episode was a decent premise that really falls on its face. Well, it's time to cut our losses as we look at the Star Trek The Next Generation episode, The Loss.
I'm absolutely lost. You have to do something.
There's brain damage.
I don't know what to do.
Powerless in the face of destruction on Star Trek.
But before I go further, make sure you subscribe to my channel. I talk a lot about Star Trek, video games, and whatever else I feel like talking about. And if you'd like to help support the channel, consider becoming a member. Be great to have you aboard. Our story begins with a counseling session. Ensign Brooks has been seeing Deanna Troi to help her through the grief of losing her husband in an accident. And it's very apparent that she's not facing her grief, mostly distracting herself with work, volunteering, and extra studies. Deanna points out that she's making things a lot harder on herself by not allowing herself to feel her grief.
But I feel fine.
I sense bullshit. Troi gets Ensign Brooks to admit her regrets of having all her husband's belongings taken away after his funeral, to which Deanna produces a music box that belonged to him. Now, for all the grief I'm about to give Deanna in this episode, this scene does show some of her qualities. She's a thoughtful person and legitimately cares about her patients, even going beyond the call of duty. A typical therapist might not recover Ensign Brooks' husband's music box, but Deanna did. She has virtues that could have made her a very compelling character had she been written better throughout the show.
How did you know?
Meanwhile, on the bridge...
Well, it would do you good to have a little fresh holodeck air.
Oh, sure, because Riker needs to spend more time in the holodeck.
Your holodeck activities can wait until later.
But all this merriment is cut short when Worf notices a vast field on the sensors that just disappears. Okay, I'm sure it's nothing to worry about.
Holy headache.
And just before Troi can reach for that Tylenol, she passes out. So the Enterprise finds itself being pulled somewhere by something. It's enough to give anyone a headache.
What a headache.
Deanna finally calls Dr. Crusher to report that she feels dizzy, and after Beverly asks if she hit her head, which Deanna isn't sure, she advises Deanna to lie down, breathe deeply, and stay calm. She's got a bunch of calls all over the ship, but she'll be there as soon as she can. When you consider that the Enterprise was just shaking around just a few minutes ago, it's a reasonable conclusion that there might be worse injuries that need to be attended to. Deanna being dizzy isn't exactly high on the priorities list.
A few moments later.
I've got a sickbay filled with headaches.
Deanna seems fine now, just a little foggy. Beverly wants her to go to sickbay for some scans, but Riker's calling a meeting. They're about to head over together when Deanna realized she left her curling iron on. No, something's wrong, but Deanna insists everything's fine.
Nothing, I'm fine.
A few moments later.
I don't sense anything. All of you. You're all blank to me.
Picard to HR, cancel that lie detector test for Counselor Troi. Beverly runs some tests on Troi and confirms that she didn't have a concussion or blow to the head, her brain simply stopped empathing. Other than the fact that she can't sense anybody or their emotions, Deanna feels fine. Beverly's not sure she can treat it, and while Deanna points out that the Betazoid brain can heal itself and possibly reverse this, Beverly points out that Deanna is still half plain old regular human and that she should talk to someone. And this is the point where Deanna starts getting super defensive.
It's no different than one of us suddenly going blind.
You don't have to tell me, Beverly. I understand the psychology. I may be perfectly fine tomorrow.
And you may not.
Deanna insists on getting back to work, not that she's emotionally compromised or anything, and leaves sickbay.
I don't have a psychology degree,
But I have an N64, 2 controllers, GoldenEye, and a Domino's pizza. Let's talk. Riker offers to lend an ear to Deanna, but...
They walk on eggshells around you. Sometimes they avoid you altogether.
Deanna? You've been dealing with this for like 15 minutes! Maybe people are avoiding you because they simply haven't seen you yet! And look, it's not like Deanna venting her frustrations can't work. It just doesn't work when she's only been dealing with this for a short amount of time. If she was struggling throughout the episode, trying to do her job but can't, seeing people stopping conversations when she enters the room, trying to spare her feelings, or even being overly helpful, then this frustration would be warranted. She just wants things to go back to normal. But here, it's like she's getting upset over things that haven't happened yet, and at people who haven't done them. Here in this scene, she's lashing out at Riker when he's just trying to be a friend, concerned coworker, ex-boyfriend, oh, whatever the hell he is.
Hey. I'm sorry.
Oh, please.
Deanna goes back to work, and things don't go well.
You're absolutely wrong, Deanna.
It's a shame we can't tell if they're sentient.
What do you mean by that?
So you've chosen a hissy fit. Also, just want to mention that I've seen people online point out that it's really rich that Deanna's getting super defensive about losing her empathic sense to a blind guy!
I was born blind.
Riker's next to her looking concerned, maybe thinking he needs to fire up the N64 after all. But then Troi leaves the meeting brusquely.
Beverly, I can't do my job.
Deanna, you had one appointment where you couldn't read your patient, said that maybe her single night of crying isn't going to fix everything, and was told you were wrong. And then you lashed out at Geordi, of all people. I don't call that being unable to do your job. Beverly's been researching. There's nothing she can do, but she's still trying.
How do you people live like this?
Excuse me? You people? Us plain old humans? You mean the plain old human that your father was?
You have no idea. No idea what this is like.
Translation, you have no idea what it's like to be normal! Beverly then asks her what she would do if their positions were reversed. And Troi...
I wouldn't have been in here treating skinned elbows while you were lying passed out on your office floor.
Okay, hold up, Counselor Normal. First of all, Beverly had no idea you were passed out. You never mentioned it. You just said,
I'm feeling very dizzy.
The ship had just shook around for a couple of minutes, and there are probably people with more pressing injuries that needed to be addressed. It wasn't until after Beverly got there that you mentioned the intense pain. Like, if you wanted Beverly to get there right away, maybe open with that!
You have no idea.
So clearly, Deanna's a little upset. Well, I'm sure this'll just blow over.
It's time I accept the truth, Captain. And resign as ship's counselor.
Well, that escalated quickly. Troi wants to resign because she can't do her job even though she's been without her empathic abilities for, what, a day? Picard's trying to keep Deanna on. Empathic awareness isn't a requirement. You can adjust. Riker can't fit into your jumpsuits.
With all due respect, Captain, you don't know what you're talking about.
Riker stops by Troi's quarters and uses his manly arms to give her a hug that she probably doesn't deserve.
You'd be surprised how far a hug goes with Geordi. Or Worf.
Ah yes, the line that launched 1,000 horrified expressions with my Photoshop job. You're welcome, everyone. Troi doesn't know what to do. All around her are familiar faces, worn out spaces, worn out faces, and none of them she can read.
You have no idea.
Oh, I see. We're back to, you don't know what it's like to be normal! Yep, us poor unempathic souls couldn't possibly know what it's like to not sense emotions.
You have no idea.
But then Riker makes an observation, the kick to the low-cut jumpsuit that Troi needed. We're on equal footing now.
You always had an advantage. A little bit of control of every situation. That must have been a very safe position to be in.
Now, if you recall my video about the price, Troi chides Raul over using his empathic abilities to gain an advantage in negotiations. And Raul points out that she basically does the same thing. Now, granted, Raul was being much more unethical about it and was hiding his abilities to gain an advantage, but Riker does have a point that Troi had an advantage in her day-to-day life, even if she didn't try to hide it. He also points out that she was always a little too aristocratic about her Betazoid heritage, like her human half isn't good enough.
That isn't true.
Isn't it?
Now, this is actually a really good concept to explore. So much focus is placed on Troi being Betazoid that we never really got to see the writers explore her human half. Spock being torn between his two halves made him a compelling character, not simply a character married to logic. There's certainly that potential for Deanna Troi. It's a shame this episode doesn't do a better job of it.
I'll check in on you later.
Hey, you got off easily, Deanna. Imagine if Riker said this.
You know, Coach used to say something that would fire us up when we were behind. Loser! You're a loser! Are you feeling sorry for yourself? Well, you should be, because you are dirt!
Looking for a change of scenery, Troi decides to move her moping to 10 forward. Just to get startled by Guinan.
More tea?
Dang, Guinan, how much milk you putting in that tea?
Tea? Earl Grey, hot.
Of course it's hot. What you want in it?
Nothing.
Guinan sits down and decides to tell Deanna that she's actually going to apply for her job.
I won't be a counselor on board. And I suppose I'll have a very long line at that bar. It would be nice to have a nice office, too.
To be fair, Guinan would make a better counselor than Troi. Heck, Quark would make a better counselor than Troi. Even Vic Fontaine, a hologram, would make a better counselor than Troi. And he sings!
Look, kid, I don't know what's going to happen to you out there. All I can tell you is that you've got to play the cards life deals you.
Troi recognizes that Guinan's trying to make her see that she has other instincts that she could use for counseling, but it takes so long to develop those skills.
It's not that easy.
No one said it was easy. It's much harder than you think.
Back at the office, while Deanna's packing up her things, Ensign Brooks stops by for her appointment and tells Deanna that she was right about her. She was continuing to hide from her grief, and that even if Troi couldn't sense her emotions, she still helped.
Maybe you couldn't sense what I was feeling, but you helped.
It's a shame Deanna resigned already.
And resign as ship's counselor.
Now, I've been completely ignoring the dilemma of the week the Enterprise is facing. It turns out that the Enterprise got caught in this field of these two-dimensional beings heading towards a cosmic string. If they get too close to the string, the gravitational force will destroy them. Which I know sounds really dire, but we need to talk about Deanna's problems.
You have no idea.
All attempts at communication have failed, so Picard decides to bring in retired empath Deanna Troi to try to figure out how they think.
I wish I knew how to help, Captain.
Shut up, Deanna! You're helping Data figure this out! Deanna speculates that maybe these beings are acting instinctively, that for whatever reason, they're going to the cosmic string on their own accord, not being pulled by it. Data proposes distracting the beings by imitating the string's vibration.
Vibration? We're not talking about a violin, Data.
Which works, and the Enterprise is able to break free. But lo and behold...
they're home. I sensed it.
Basically, there were so many two-dimensional beings that they overwhelmed Deanna's senses, so she lost her empathic abilities and put everyone on board through hell for the last couple of days.
Oh, Beverly.
Apology accepted.
I was so awful to her. I wouldn't have been in here treating skinned elbows while you were lying passed out on your office floor.
Guinan inquires about that counselor's job, and Deanna tells her that it's been taken. Except that Deanna resigned, so welcome aboard, Counselor Guinan!
Here's a little souvenir I picked up from Magus 3. That was setting number 1. Anyone want to see setting number 2?
I just thought I'd ask.
Riker leans in for a kiss, but they're totally not dating or anything. And Deanna scolds him for calling her aristocratic as the scene cuts to the Enterprise flying into the vastness of space. And that was The Loss. It's one of those episodes where the premise isn't bad and had a lot of potential to say something on learning to live with a disability, or even deepen Deanna Troi as a character where she has to explore her human half. What we got instead was pretty mishandled and resulted in Deanna acting like a jerk the entire time. The premise alone should make her sympathetic, but when she lashes out at almost everyone around her, including Riker, all while she hadn't been without her empathic abilities long enough to have built up frustration with it, it makes it hard to feel sorry for her. Not to mention that Deanna lost an ability that we all managed to live without. So when she complains, "You have no idea," like, yes we do, Deanna!
We get by pretty well, actually.
I get what the episode is trying to do, say something about living with a disability, but it did not work very well and could have been handled a lot better. While certainly far from being the worst of Next Gen, there were a lot of missed opportunities in this episode, and it even made Deanna Troi look bad. It's not so terrible to skip, but if you were to, it's no great loss.
How can you know what it's like to lose something you never had?
So what do you think? What are your thoughts on The Loss? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Was Troi handled as badly in this episode as I thought? Was I maybe even too harsh on Deanna and should have cut her more slack? And what are some episodes you'd like to see me cover on Treknalysis? Please, leave comments below and discuss. As always, thanks for tuning in to another episode of Treknalysis. If you like what you see, why not give my video a like and subscribe to my channel? Tell your friends! Until next time...
You have no idea